She was considered fertile, but nobody wanted her until a cowboy proved otherwise. She grew up in a small, quiet town, surrounded by wide fields and rolling hills that stretched as far as the eye could see. Life there moved slowly, with neighbors knowing each other's stories and families passing down traditions from one generation to the next. From a very young age, she realized that people looked at her differently. It was not because of anything she had done, but because of whispers that seemed to follow her wherever she went. Some said she was fertile, though no one explained why they thought that. It was a word that seemed to carry a strange mix of admiration and judgment. People praised her potential to have children, as if it were the most important thing she could ever offer. Yet, when it came to love or friendship, she often found herself on the outside, watching others form connections that she could never quite reach. Her parents were kind and hardworking, raising her with love and care. They owned a small farm on the outskirts of town, where she spent most of her childhood helping with chores, tending to animals, and learning the ways of the land. She liked the routine, the sense of purpose it gave her, and the small moments of accomplishment when she completed a difficult task. Yet, even in her family, she sometimes felt a quiet pressure. Relatives would make comments about her future, hinting that her gift could make her valuable to the right person, but no one ever seemed to explain what that really meant. At school, she faced a different kind of challenge. Children can be cruel, especially when they sense something different about someone. They would whisper behind her back, giggle when she passed by, and sometimes even ask awkward questions that made her blush. She learned to keep her head down, to focus on her studies, and to find comfort in the few friends who truly cared for her. Reading books became a refuge, a way to escape the constant reminder that the world seemed to want something from her that she didn't yet understand. She dreamed of adventure, of finding a place where she could be valued for who she was, not just for what others thought she could give. Her teenage years brought more of the same. Boys in town were polite, sometimes even kind, but they never looked at her the way they looked at other girls. Some were curious because of her reputation, but when they tried to approach her, it was always for the wrong reasons. It hurt in ways that were hard to explain, a deep, gnawing sadness that came from feeling wanted for something so personal rather than for her heart or her mind. She began to withdraw, spending long hours working in the fields or tending to the animals. It was there, under the open sky, that she felt free. The world seemed simpler when she was alone, and the sun and wind became her companions. Despite the loneliness, she developed resilience. She learned to rely on herself, to find joy in small victories, and to cherish the little moments of beauty that life offered. A bird landing on a fence post, the first bloom of a flower in spring, or the smell of fresh earth after rain, these things reminded her that life was still full of wonder, even if people sometimes misunderstood her. She also developed a quiet empathy for others. Because she knew what it felt like to be judged unfairly, she made it a point to treat everyone with kindness, even when they did not always deserve it. It was not always easy, and sometimes her heart ached from the unfairness of it all, but she never let bitterness take root. Her reputation continued to follow her into adulthood. By the time she reached her early 20s, it seemed like everyone in town had an opinion about her. People would nod politely, smile, and then whisper behind her back. Some men would approach her, only to pull away once they realized she was not what they expected. She felt invisible and at the same time exposed, a strange combination that left her feeling weary of human company. She wondered if she would ever find someone who could see beyond the labels and rumors, someone who would care about her dreams, fears, and the quiet strength that had kept her going all these years. Through it all, she never lost her sense of hope. It was a fragile thing, easily bruised, but it refused to die. She threw herself into her work, planting crops, caring for animals, and helping her parents manage the farm. The rhythm of daily life gave her comfort, and the accomplishments she earned through hard work reminded her that she was capable and strong. She also began to explore the world beyond her town, taking long walks through the hills, visiting the nearby river, and sometimes traveling to the county fair, where she could watch people she did not know and imagine different lives. These small adventures kept her imagination alive and reminded her that there was more to life than the narrow expectations placed upon her. She also found joy in small, meaningful friendships. There were a few people in town who looked beyond the rumors and treated her with genuine care. They laughed with her, listened to her dreams, and offered comfort when the loneliness felt too heavy. These relationships became lifelines, teaching her that connection was possible even in a world that often seemed judgmental. She learned to cherish these bonds, knowing that true companionship could not be rushed or forced, but had to grow slowly and sincerely. Even with these small comforts, she could not escape the feeling that something important was missing. She longed for someone who could truly see her, someone who would value her not for her reputation, but for the person she had become through years of struggle, resilience, and quiet courage. Every evening, as she watched the sun dip behind the hills and the sky turn gold and pink, she would imagine meeting someone who would understand her heart. She did not know who that person would be or when they would arrive, but the thought kept her moving forward, giving her strength to face another day in a town that often misunderstood her. Her story in these early years was one of patience and quiet endurance. She learned that life did not always reward those who followed the rules or tried to please everyone. Sometimes, it tested them in ways that seemed unfair, yet it was in these tests that true character was formed. By the time she reached her mid-20s, she was no longer the timid, unsure girl who had grown up under whispers and judgment. She had become someone resilient, strong, and quietly wise. Though her heart still longed for love, she now knew that it would have to be the right kind of love, one that recognized her full worth and not just the expectations others had placed on her. Little did she know, the next chapter of her life was about to begin. A person would enter her world who would change the way she saw herself, who would treat her with the respect and care she had always dreamed of, and who would prove that her worth was never just about the whispers that had followed her for so long. But for now, she continued her life in the fields and hills, quietly strong, quietly hopeful, and ready for the day when someone would finally see her the way she deserved to be seen. As she moved into her early 20s, the world around her seemed to grow smaller yet heavier. With expectations, the quiet town she had always known now felt like a place where every action, every smile, and every word was watched and judged. People continued to talk about her in hushed tones, calling her fertile, as if it were a title she had earned or a burden she had chosen. The word hung over her like a shadow, following her through streets, markets, and even church gatherings. Some whispered it admiringly, others mockingly, but all treated her differently because of it. It was an invisible weight that no one could see, but she felt it deeply every day. Men approached her, sometimes shyly, sometimes boldly, yet each interaction left her feeling more like an object than a person. They spoke with curiosity, asking questions she did not want to answer, hinting at desires she could never share. Each time, she would smile politely, nod, and slowly withdraw. Inside, her heart ached with a mixture of loneliness and frustration. She longed for someone who could see beyond the rumors, someone who could appreciate her for her kindness, intelligence, and the quiet strength that had carried her through years of judgment. Instead, she was met with eyes that lingered on what she had been labeled, not who she was. Her parents tried to shield her as best they could, offering words of comfort and encouragement. "You are more than what people say," her mother would tell her, pressing a hand to her shoulder as they walked through the fields. "Your heart, your mind, your spirit, that is what matters most. The world may not see it yet, but one day someone will." Her father, A quiet man of few words, showed his support through actions rather than speech, leaving small notes of encouragement on her breakfast plate or helping her with long, hard tasks on the farm so she would not feel alone. Though their support gave her strength, it could not protect her from the judgment that came from every corner of the town. The townspeople, while polite on the surface, had a way of making their opinions known without ever speaking them directly. She would catch groups of women in the market exchanging knowing glances, hear laughter that seemed aimed at her, or notice men quickly looking away when she entered a room. These small gestures, subtle but persistent, made her feel like an outsider in a place she had always called home. Over time, she grew more cautious. She learned to smile when she needed to respond politely to conversations, and to leave quickly before anyone could ask intrusive questions. Yet, in the quiet moments alone, the sadness would creep back in, a reminder that she had not yet found the connection she longed for. Her work on the farm became both a refuge and a challenge. She spent long days tending to animals, planting and harvesting crops, and helping her parents maintain the land. These tasks required strength, patience, and careful attention, and she poured herself into them wholeheartedly. The rhythm of farm life, with its predictable routines and tangible results, offered comfort in a world that often felt unpredictable and harsh. She found satisfaction in small accomplishments, whether it was repairing a fence, nursing a sick calf back to health, or watching a field of crops grow under her care. These moments reminded her that she was capable and strong, even if the world around her failed to recognize it. Despite the long hours and hard work, she yearned for companionship. She dreamed of someone who would see her as a whole person, someone who would value her thoughts, her dreams, and her heart. She imagined conversations that went beyond polite words, walks that felt like shared journeys, and laughter that came easily between two people who understood each other. But each encounter with the men of the town seemed to fall short. They either treated her with a distant curiosity or avoided her entirely, unwilling to connect with the person she truly was. This repeated disappointment made her question whether she would ever find love, whether someone could ever see her beyond the surface. As the seasons changed, so did the nature of her struggle. Spring brought with it the vibrant energy of new life, and the town buzzed with festivals, fairs, and gatherings. She would attend these events out of curiosity, hoping perhaps to meet someone who would notice her differently. But even amidst the music and laughter, she often felt invisible, a spectator watching others form connections she could not yet have. Summer days were spent under the blazing sun, tending to crops and animals, the heat reflecting the persistent pressure she felt from the world around her. Autumn, with its golden leaves and cooler winds, offered brief moments of peace, but also reminded her of the passing of time and the urgency she felt to find her place in life. Winter was the hardest, with long, cold nights that seemed to stretch endlessly, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the quiet ache in her heart. She tried to distract herself with hobbies and small joys. Reading became a sanctuary, each page a doorway to different worlds where characters were valued for who they were, not what others expected of them. She learned to write, jotting down her thoughts and feelings in a journal she kept hidden from prying eyes. Painting, even in simple sketches, allowed her to express emotions she could not speak aloud. These creative outlets gave her a sense of control and self-expression, reminding her that even in a world that judged her unfairly, she had the power to shape her own story. Friendship, however, remained a fragile and precious thing. She had a small circle of trusted companions who treated her with respect and kindness. They laughed together, shared secrets, and supported one another through life's challenges. These relationships were her anchor, reminding her that human connection was possible, even if it had to be sought carefully. She learned to appreciate these bonds, understanding that quality mattered more than quantity. The love and care she received from these friends reinforced her belief that there were people in the world capable of seeing and valuing her true self. Yet, even with these small comforts, the sting of judgment was never far away. Gossip seemed to follow her, with neighbors and townspeople speculating about her life and intentions. Some offered unsolicited advice, while others seemed to take pleasure in her struggles. The repeated rejection, the constant whispers, and the subtle gestures of exclusion made her feel weary and sometimes hopeless. She questioned whether she would ever find someone who could love her for who she truly was, rather than the labels placed upon her. But she refused to give in entirely to despair. In the quiet moments, when the world felt particularly heavy, she would remind herself of her own worth. She remembered the skills she had honed, the resilience she had built, and the kindness she had shown even when it was not returned. She took pride in her work, her intelligence, and her ability to endure challenges with grace. Slowly, she began to see herself not as an object of judgment, but as a person with dreams, feelings, and the capacity for deep love and connection. Over time, she noticed subtle changes in herself. She walked with more confidence, spoke with a clearer voice, and began to assert her needs more openly. She learned to recognize the difference between people who genuinely cared and those who were only curious about her reputation. She became more selective with her interactions, protecting her heart from those who would not respect it. This newfound awareness gave her strength, preparing her for the day when someone would finally come into her life and see her for the person she had always been beneath the whispers and judgment. Life in the town continued, with its small joys and ongoing challenges. She faced rejection and misunderstanding, but she also experienced moments of genuine connection, beauty, and hope. Each day was a balance between navigating a judgmental world and nurturing her own sense of self-worth. Though the path was often lonely and difficult, she never stopped hoping that love, true and unconditional, would one day find her. Her story in these years was a lesson in patience, resilience, and self-discovery. She learned that the opinions of others did not define her value, and that strength could be found even in the face of repeated disappointment. The quiet town, with its fields and hills, continued to shape her life, teaching her lessons of endurance, empathy, and hope. And while she did not yet know what the future held, she was ready to face it with courage, knowing that one day, someone would recognize her true worth and see her as the extraordinary person she had always been. Life in the small town continued as it always had, with its steady rhythm of work, chores, and the quiet hum of daily life. She had learned to navigate the expectations and judgments of the townspeople, carrying herself with quiet strength and careful grace. Yet beneath her composed exterior, a part of her still longed for something more, someone who could see past the whispers, past the rumors, and into her heart. She often wondered if such a person even existed, someone who would value her for who she was rather than what the town said she could give. Little did she know, her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. It was a warm, sunny morning when the cowboy first arrived. He rode into town on a chestnut horse, tall and sturdy, with a calm confidence that seemed to set him apart from the usual visitors. The townspeople noticed him immediately, whispering about the new stranger and speculating about his intentions. He was a man of few words at first, observing the town with a careful, steady gaze, taking note of its rhythms, its people, and its quiet tensions. Unlike most newcomers, he did not seem interested in gossip or appearances. He simply moved through the town with a natural ease, offering polite nods and greetings but never lingering in idle chatter. She first saw him at the local market, a bustling place where farmers sold their produce, townsfolk exchanged news, and children ran between stalls. She had been arranging her own small display of fruits and vegetables, focusing on her work as she often did to avoid the stares and whispers around her. The moment she glanced up, she noticed him. He was examining the produce carefully, but when his eyes met hers, he smiled in a way that felt genuine, warm, and free from judgment. It was a simple gesture, but it made her heart skip a beat. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not for her reputation, not for what others said about her, but for the person she was right in that moment. Their first conversation was brief but meaningful. He asked about the produce she was selling, showing curiosity about her work and life, rather than the rumors he had surely heard. His questions were thoughtful, his tone respectful, and he listened carefully to her responses without interruption. It was a small interaction, yet it left a lasting impression. She found herself smiling more than she had in months, her chest light with the possibility of connection. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, someone could care about her truly and wholly. In the days that followed, their paths crossed more frequently. He would stop by her stall at the market, always with a kind word or a friendly question. He offered to help with heavy boxes, showing thoughtfulness that went beyond simple politeness. Gradually, she began to trust him, to look forward to these brief encounters, and to enjoy the sense of normalcy he brought into her life. Unlike the men of her town, who often seemed curious or dismissive, he treated her as an equal, with respect and genuine interest. This difference did not go unnoticed, and it sparked a quiet hope within her that perhaps she had finally met someone who could understand her heart. Their growing connection was slow and careful. She had learned the hard way not to trust too easily, to guard her heart from disappointment, and to be wary of people who only wanted her for what they thought she could provide. Yet with him, the rules felt different. He did not rush her, did not pressure her, and did not make assumptions about who she was or what she wanted. Instead, he showed patience, listening when she spoke, observing when she was quiet, and responding with thoughtfulness and care. It was a new experience for her, one that made her feel safe and valued, and it slowly began to chip away at the walls she had built around herself over the years. She found herself sharing small details of her life with him, stories she had never told anyone else. She spoke of her childhood on the farm, the long hours of work that had shaped her, and the quiet dreams she had kept hidden from the world. He listened without judgment, offering empathy and understanding in every response. It was a simple act, yet it meant more to her than she could put into words. For the first time, she felt that someone truly cared about her experiences, her thoughts, and her feelings. It was not just attraction or curiosity. It was recognition of her as a whole person, and it filled her with a sense of belonging she had longed for all her life. As their friendship deepened, the cowboy began to reveal more about himself as well. He shared stories of his travels, the places he had seen, and the people he had met along the way. His life had been full of challenges and adventures, and he spoke of them with honesty and humility. She found herself admiring his resilience, his strength, and the way he approached life with calm determination. Through these stories, she saw that he, too, had experienced loneliness, judgment, and the longing for genuine connection. It created a bond between them, a shared understanding that went beyond words. They spent time together not just in conversation, but in small, meaningful activities. He helped with chores on the farm, showing a willingness to learn and participate rather than simply observe. They walked through fields, talking about everything and nothing, sharing quiet moments under the open sky. Sometimes they sat by the river, listening to the water flow and finding comfort in the peacefulness of the world around them. These moments, simple yet profound, allowed her to see the depth of his character and the sincerity of his intentions. It was during these shared experiences that she began to notice changes in herself. She felt lighter, happier, and more confident. The tension that had always accompanied her interactions with the town seemed to ease when he was near. She laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and allowed herself to hope for a future that once seemed impossible. His presence reminded her that not everyone judged her by the same narrow standards, and that love and respect could exist even in a place where they had long been absent. Despite the growing closeness, she remained cautious. Years of misunderstanding, gossip, and rejection had left their mark, and she knew that trusting someone completely required time and patience. Yet, she also felt an undeniable connection, a sense that this was different from anything she had experienced before. The cowboy did not pressure her or expect her to move faster than she was ready. He simply offered friendship, respect, and the quiet reassurance that she was valued for who she truly was. It was a rare gift, and she cherished it deeply. Over time, the townspeople began to notice the bond forming between them. Some whispered in surprise, others in skepticism, but neither of them paid much attention. Their focus was on understanding each other, learning about one another's strengths and weaknesses, and building trust that could withstand the scrutiny of the world around them. In a town where appearances often mattered more than truth, their connection became a small rebellion, a quiet assertion that genuine care and understanding were more valuable than gossip or reputation. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, they sat together on a wooden fence overlooking the fields. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, the air cool and still. She shared a story from her childhood, a memory she had long kept private, and he listened with a kind attentiveness that made her heart swell. In that moment, she realized how rare and precious this connection was. She had waited for years to be seen, to be understood, and here was someone who had done exactly that without expecting anything in return. It was a moment of quiet revelation, a turning point that marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. By the time the first frost of winter touched the town, their friendship had grown into something deeper. The bond they shared was built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and a slowly growing affection that neither could ignore. She felt a sense of security she had never known, a confidence that came from being valued for her true self rather than a label imposed by others. The cowboy had proven that connection, love, and understanding were possible, even in a world that often seemed unfair and judgmental. Her life, once marked by isolation and longing, was now filled with moments of joy, laughter, and hope. She had found someone who recognized her worth, someone who treated her with kindness and respect, and someone who could see the beauty in her heart that others had overlooked for so long. It was not a love story built on grand gestures or dramatic events, but on the quiet, steadfast understanding that comes from truly seeing and valuing another person. And in that quiet, steady companionship, she began to imagine a future that once felt impossible, a life filled with partnership, respect, and the promise that she would never again be defined by whispers, rumors, or societal judgment. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, truly understood, and truly valued. And she knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning of a journey that would bring her happiness and fulfillment in ways she had long dreamed of. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, their friendship deepened into something stronger, something neither of them could have predicted. What had begun as casual conversations and polite gestures grew into a bond rooted in trust, respect, and understanding. The cowboy did not rush her, and she did not feel pressured to change or be someone she was not. Instead, they discovered the quiet joys of shared work, shared stories, and the simple pleasure of being in each other's company. Each moment together added another layer to their connection, slowly erasing the doubts and fears that had haunted her for so long. She began to notice how different he was from the people she had met before. There was a steadiness in him, a calm confidence that made the world feel less chaotic when he was near. He never judged her, never spoke over her, and never assumed he knew her thoughts before she had a chance to express them. Instead, he listened. He asked questions, paid attention to her answers, and remembered the small details that others seemed to overlook. It was a type of attention that made her feel valued in a way she had never known, and it slowly encouraged her to open up more than she had ever dared. Together, they started working on small projects around the farm. He helped repair fences, mend tools, and clear fields. She was impressed by his willingness to learn and his determination to contribute without taking over. There was a quiet rhythm to their teamwork, a balance of effort and understanding, where neither felt superior or diminished. During breaks, they would sit under the shade of an old oak tree, sharing stories of their past, laughing at small jokes, or simply enjoying the sounds of the farm. These moments, though ordinary, carried a profound significance. She began to feel a sense of belonging she had longed for her entire life, a reassurance that she was not alone in the world. The town, of course, did not remain silent. Gossip spread slowly, as it always did, and many began to notice the growing closeness between them. Some people whispered in surprise, while others seemed skeptical, questioning why she had finally found companionship. Yet, she no longer felt the same need for their approval. With him, she had discovered that the most important validation came from being seen and valued for who she truly was. The whispers of the town could not touch the bond they were building, nor could they diminish the trust and respect that had grown between them. There were moments of vulnerability that she had never allowed herself before. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills and the sky turned a soft shade of pink, she shared a story from her past, a memory she had never told anyone, of a time when she had felt utterly alone and misunderstood. Her voice trembled at first, but he listened without interruption, without judgment, offering only understanding and quiet reassurance. In that moment, she realized the depth of their connection. For the first time, she felt truly safe with someone, able to reveal the hidden corners of her heart without fear of rejection or ridicule. He, too, shared his fears and past experiences. He spoke of the loneliness he had felt traveling from town to town, the challenges he had faced, and the people he had met who had taught him lessons about resilience and kindness. Through these conversations, they discovered a shared understanding of struggle, perseverance, and the longing for genuine connection. It was in these exchanges, both joyful and serious, that their trust solidified. They were no longer just companions. They were confidants, allies, and increasingly, something deeper. The work they did together also taught her about patience and collaboration. There were days when tasks were harder than expected, when fences broke, crops failed, or unexpected problems arose. On those days, he remained calm, guiding her through solutions without criticism or frustration. His presence transformed challenges into opportunities for learning and cooperation. She began to admire not only his strength and skill, but also his character, the way he handled difficulties with integrity, humility, and patience. These qualities further strengthened her trust and deepened her respect for him. Small gestures became significant symbols of their growing closeness. He would bring her simple gifts from his travels, a beautifully carved wooden figurine, a colorful piece of cloth, or a small book of poems. She treasured these tokens not for their material value, but for the thoughtfulness behind them. In return, she shared meals she had prepared, homemade preserves, and stories that had long been locked away. These exchanges created a rhythm of giving and receiving, a mutual appreciation that reinforced their bond. It was through these small acts that they learned the power of kindness, attention, and consideration in nurturing a relationship. One crisp autumn afternoon, they went for a long walk through the fields. The leaves had turned golden and red, and the air was filled with the scent of earth and fallen leaves. They walked side by side, sharing stories, laughing at small jokes, and occasionally sitting on a fallen log to rest. During this walk, she realized how deeply she had come to trust him. She felt comfortable sharing thoughts and dreams she had never spoken aloud, knowing that he would listen with care. She began to understand that trust was not built overnight but through consistent actions, patience, and mutual respect, all of which he had demonstrated in abundance. Their bond was tested in small ways, too. Occasionally, townspeople would make careless comments or spread rumors meant to unsettle her. In the past, such remarks would have caused anxiety or self-doubt. This time, however, he was there. He would listen, offer perspective, and remind her of her worth beyond the opinions of others. With him by her side, she found the courage to face judgment without fear, to stand tall despite the whispers, and to prioritize their shared bond over the shallow approval of others. These experiences taught her that true support and partnership were as much about emotional guidance as they were about physical presence. As winter approached, bringing long nights and chilly winds, their companionship provided warmth and comfort. They spent evenings by the fireplace, talking for hours, sharing dreams of the future, and laughing until their cheeks hurt. The farm, once a place of hard work and solitude, became a place of shared memories and mutual care. They discovered joy in everyday tasks, whether it was chopping firewood, tending to animals, or preparing meals together. These shared experiences strengthened their connection, revealing the beauty of partnership built on respect, understanding, and patience. Through all these moments, she began to see herself differently. She realized that her worth had never been defined by what the townspeople said or by the labels they placed upon her. Instead, it was defined by her character, her resilience, and her capacity for love and trust. The cowboy's steady presence reminded her that she could be cherished for who she was, not for what others expected of her. Slowly, she let go of the self-doubt that had lingered for years, replacing it with confidence, hope, and the belief that love and happiness were truly possible. By the end of the season, it was clear to both of them that their relationship had grown beyond friendship. It was a bond built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and deep emotional understanding. Neither had rushed the process, and neither had expected the other to change. Instead, they had allowed trust, patience, and genuine care to shape their connection naturally. It was a love rooted in authenticity, the kind of love that recognized and celebrated the entirety of a person, flaws and all. She often reflected on how far she had come. From the quiet, isolated girl who had once felt judged and undervalued, she had grown into a woman who was confident, strong, and capable of forming meaningful connections. She had learned that trust and love were earned through consistent actions, patience, and empathy. She had discovered that true companionship was not about rushing or demanding, but about mutual understanding, respect, and the willingness to face life's challenges together. As the first snow fell, blanketing the town and fields in white, she and the cowboy stood together outside the farmhouse, watching the flakes drift down gently. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of winter, she felt a profound sense of peace. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with someone who saw her, understood her, and valued her completely. The town's whispers, the past rejections, and the misunderstandings of years gone by no longer held power over her. She had found a connection that was real, steady, and life-changing, a bond that would guide her into the future with hope, love, and trust. By the time spring returned to the small town, bringing fresh blossoms and warmer days, she had transformed in ways that even she could hardly recognize. The girl who had once felt invisible under the weight of whispers and judgments had grown into a woman who knew her own worth. Her confidence had blossomed quietly, nurtured by the steady presence of the cowboy, whose care and respect had shown her what it meant to be valued as a whole person. She had learned that love was not about meeting someone else's expectations or living up to labels, but about connection, understanding, and mutual support. The bond between her and the cowboy had deepened beyond friendship, evolving naturally into a love built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. They had faced challenges together, small and large, and had discovered the strength of partnership. He had proven time and again that he saw her for who she truly was, not for the opinions of the town, her past, or even the label that had followed her for years. With him, she felt safe to be vulnerable, to laugh freely, to dream openly, and to share every corner of her heart without fear of judgment. Life together became a rhythm, comforting in its predictability, yet exciting in its possibilities. They worked side by side on the farm, repairing fences, planting crops, and tending to the animals. Their conversations, once cautious and brief, now flowed easily, full of humor, shared memories, and plans for the future. She noticed the way he paid attention to small details, the way he remembered her favorite flowers, the way he noticed when she was tired and offered a quiet hand to help, the way he always encouraged her ideas and dreams. These gestures, simple yet profound, made her feel cherished and understood. Evenings were spent sharing meals, sometimes prepared together, sometimes made as a surprise for the other. They would sit on the porch after dinner, watching the sun dip below the horizon and sharing stories of the day. The sound of the wind through the trees, the distant calls of animals, and the soft glow of lanterns created a world that felt private, peaceful, and completely theirs. In these moments, she felt a deep sense of belonging and fulfillment, knowing that she had found someone who truly valued her presence, her thoughts, and her heart. The town's whispers did not disappear entirely, but they no longer carried the weight they once had. She had learned to walk with her head held high, confident in the knowledge that her worth was not determined by the judgment of others. People began to notice a change in her demeanor, the quiet strength, the warmth in her smile, and the way she carried herself with grace and confidence. While some still whispered, others began to admire the woman she had become, seeing the happiness and calm that radiated from her. Through the cowboys' support and her own growing self-awareness, she learned the importance of patience and understanding in a relationship. They did not rush into declarations or dramatic gestures. Instead, their love grew steadily, reinforced by daily acts of kindness, attention, and care. He was there in moments of joy and moments of challenge, offering guidance without control and sharing his life without expectation. She, in turn, gave herself fully, trusting that the bond they had built could withstand the pressures of the outside world. One sunny afternoon, they worked together in the garden, planting new crops for the season. She paused to wipe her brow and looked at him, noticing the way he moved with ease, his focus gentle but steady. In that quiet moment, she realized how deeply she had come to love him, not just for his kindness or his strength, but for the way he made her feel valued, respected, and seen. He noticed her glance and smiled, a soft, knowing smile that spoke volumes. No words were necessary. The depth of their connection was understood in that simple look. Life also brought challenges, as it always does. There were times when storms damaged crops, when unexpected problems arose on the farm, or when disagreements tested their patience. Yet even in these moments, they faced obstacles together. Arguments were met with calm discussion, mistakes with understanding, and challenges with collaboration. These experiences reinforced their bond, showing them that love was not just about joy, but about commitment, resilience, and the ability to support each other through difficulties. She realized that the true measure of a relationship was not in avoiding problems, but in how they were handled together. She also reflected on her journey, the years of judgment and isolation that had once weighed so heavily on her. She understood now that those experiences, while painful, had shaped her into the person she had become, resilient, empathetic, and capable of deep love. She no longer saw them as burdens, but as lessons that had prepared her to recognize and value true partnership when it arrived. The cowboy had entered her life at the right moment, offering her a mirror to see her own worth, and helping her understand that love was about recognition, respect, and shared life rather than labels or expectations. In quiet moments, she would often think about the girl she had once been, timid, uncertain, and weighed down by whispers. She felt compassion for her younger self, acknowledging the strength it had taken to endure years of judgment and rejection. And she felt gratitude, deep and profound, for the journey that had led her to this place. She realized that happiness was not something given by others, but something cultivated through self-awareness, patience, and the courage to trust again. As summer approached, bringing long, warm days and blooming fields, they began to make plans for the future. Conversations turned to dreams of expanding the farm, possibly starting a family, and creating a home filled with laughter, care, and mutual respect. These discussions were not rushed or pressured. They were natural, joyful, and filled with hope. She felt a sense of excitement about the years to come, knowing that they would face life together as partners, each supporting the other's growth, happiness, and dreams. The relationship also deepened in its emotional intimacy. They shared fears, hopes, and dreams that had once been hidden away. She spoke of the years she had spent feeling invisible, and he shared his own struggles with loneliness and the search for genuine connection. In sharing these vulnerabilities, they strengthened their trust and reinforced their bond. Each confession, each moment of openness became a brick in the foundation of their lasting partnership. She understood now that love was not only about affection or attraction, but about seeing and being seen, understanding and being understood. As the years passed, their life together became a story of quiet fulfillment. They continued to work on the farm, laugh together, and support each other through the ups and downs of life. Their love was not marked by dramatic gestures or constant excitement, but by consistency, care, and unwavering respect. It was a love that could withstand gossip, hardships, and the unpredictable challenges of life, built on the trust and understanding that had taken years to cultivate. She had finally reached a place of contentment and fulfillment. The whispers of the town, the judgments of the past, and the loneliness that had once defined her life no longer held power over her. She had found someone who valued her entirely, her heart, her mind, and her spirit. With him, she experienced a happiness she had once thought impossible, a peace that came from being truly seen and loved. She realized that life's greatest gift was not the approval of others, but the ability to share one's life with someone who recognizes and cherishes the person you are. On a calm spring evening, as the sun set over the fields and the sky glowed with soft pink and gold hues, she stood beside him, feeling the warmth of his presence and the certainty of their connection. She looked at the life they had built together, the partnership, love, and trust that had grown from the first moment they met. She smiled, knowing that she was no longer defined by whispers, judgments, or fear. She had discovered her own strength, and she had found a love that honored and celebrated her fully. In that moment, she understood the full truth of her journey. Happiness is not given by others. It is nurtured through patience, resilience, and the courage to trust again. She realized that life had led her to this point, not by chance, but through the lessons of the past, the quiet endurance of her struggles, and the unwavering care of someone who saw her completely. Her heart, once heavy with longing and doubt, now felt light, full of hope, and ready for the future. Together, they faced the world with confidence, knowing that their bond was strong enough to endure any challenge. They laughed, worked, and dreamed together, building a life rooted in love, respect, and partnership. The small town, once a place of judgment and whispers, had become the backdrop to a story of resilience, hope, and true connection. And in this life they were creating together, she finally understood what it meant to be seen, valued, and loved completely. Her journey, from a girl weighed down by judgment to a woman cherished and respected, was a testament to the power of patience, trust, and genuine human connection. She had learned that worth is never defined by what others say or expect, but by the strength, kindness, and heart one brings to the world. And in finding the cowboy, she had found not only love but also the affirmation that her life, her dreams, and her heart mattered entirely, exactly as they were.